Hey there, this is Ari. Welcome back to the Energy Blueprint podcast. In this episode, I'm going to be talking to my friend Brian Vaszily on the hidden toxins in your food and personal care products. Enjoy the episode. Hey there, this is Ari Witten. Welcome back. Right now, I am here with Brian Vaszily, who is a prominent leader, researcher, and advocate in natural health and wellness for over 20 years. He's the founder of the popular health destination, theartofantiaging.com, whose mission is to empower those in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s and beyond with the most effective evidence-based natural solutions to look and feel their best, avoid and overcome disease, and live long doing it. In the past year, he created and hosted 2 different high-profile summits featuring top anti-aging and longevity doctors and researchers that were attended by 300,000 people. Earlier in his career, he was also key to building Mercola.com, The Truth About Cancer, and other well-known natural health organizations. He's authored multiple best-selling books and appeared extensively in media, including ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox. So welcome, my friend. Such a pleasure to connect with you yet again.
Hello again, Ari, and I'm so honored to be on this. I'm excited about it too, so it's good to be here.
Yeah, so you are going to be talking all about avoiding some specific foods to enhance your energy levels, commonly consumed foods. I'm really excited to dig into this with you, and I'm excited to dig into health and anti-aging with someone who's been around this for a very long time and who has interviewed probably hundreds of the world's experts on anti-aging and longevity. So let's get into it.
Yep, sounds good. So, well, first of all, when we say foods, I will put the little quotes around that because let's start with the ultra simple premise of what health is. And this is one way, that I define it. It really is about putting the best stuff inside of you, right? And trying to keep the worst stuff out. At the end of the day, whether you're talking your physical health, emotional health, any aspect, that's really what it's all about, to overcome disease, to look your best, even feel your best, all those good things, right? So obviously you are, known as the experts in my opinion, which is why I had you in my summit when it comes to energy, and that's what we're discussing here in large part. Now, if you have any symptoms, I like to call them mystery symptoms, things where you're not so sure, what the source of those may be. Fatigue, lack of energy is certainly a huge one. Brain fog, moodiness, depression, any sort of dizziness, and I really could go on and on with all sorts of symptoms. You probably want to pay extra close attention to this, because now when I'm talking about foods, what I'm really, really talking about is the foods, so to speak, in the cosmetics and personal care products that we feed our body. Now, it is a unusual way, maybe, for some people to think about it, because we really don't think about, these products that we apply to our skin, or spray on ourselves or apply even into our hair as food, so to speak. But that's precisely what they are. And I'll dive deeper into that for you. And I often like to say that thank you for pointing out, decades really of research on this, interviewing hundreds of people and diving deep into all kinds of, journals and research, that the typical cosmetics are really the worst offenders that people are putting really into their bodies. And the reason that I say that is because, in a sense, there are toxins obviously in foods people are more aware of, right? There's toxins in the air we breathe, certainly, especially inside the home, and a lot of people are aware of that. But the toxins that are inside of these cosmetics and personal care products, by which I mean anything from anti-aging products to deodorants under your arm, are a big one to be concerned about, to, again, things you put on your hair, on your face. These things we are actively feeding our skin, and therefore our bodies, are day after day after day. And they're designed to be, on and therefore penetrated into the skin. Interesting, surprising statistic to many people is that the average woman uses 12 personal care products a day. The last time I saw the data for men, I think it was about 6 to 8 personal care products a day for men. So we're kind of catching up there, actually. The charts are evening out slowly. And for women,
my wife will attest that I am not part of the group of men that's helping us catch up. I think I maybe use like one personal, like soap, soap and toothpaste. I think that's about
and
it.
you want to know something? I can go off on a tangent and tell you why that's a very smart choice overall in many regards. But we'll get to all that actually. So these 12 products are a day contain an average of 168 different chemicals in them. Now, another profoundly revealing statistic is that for example, the European Union, 1,300 different chemicals have been banned for use from cosmetics and from personal care products. Here in the United States, it's now a total of 11.
Wow.
Yeah, it's rather stunning. So, with that in mind, let me dive a little deeper on why I say that typical cosmetics are the worst offenders for people in a sense of toxins overall. Now, I think, this is certainly subjective, but I do think a lot of people would agree if they back off, maybe even analyze their own view on this, but certainly in a general sense, when we think about skin, we don't really think about it the same way we think about our kidneys or our brains or our lungs. We don't think about it, about what it really is. It's an organ. It's the largest organ in our body. But instead, it's the one on the outside. It's how we look, basically. It defines so much of that, right? And people often tend to think about it, therefore, kind of in a more inanimate way versus the rest of the body. It's something to design. It's something to slather stuff on to try to improve the look of it. But really what it is, it's not just the largest organ in the body, and that alone is, pretty telling. It also is a fundamental part of our immune system, right? It's the front line. I mean, I could argue it might be the fundamental part of our immune system because it does the job of keeping out most of the stuff that we don't want inside. And that's not only because it has its own microbiome, but that's part of the skin. A lot of people have heard this term microbiome, and we think about our gut mostly with that. And indeed, there's certainly a very important microbiome in your gut, and there's also a few others on different body parts. And one of the most fundamental that we have is on our skin. There can be, depending on where on your body, there can be 1,000 different types of necessary good bacteria. Now that, again, is just one aspect of the immunity that our skin attempts to afford us, but it does work. It's work for it to do that. So all that said, back to the idea of food, well, it really is food because truly the skin eats. It consumes. It consumes. You can kind of, picture all those little pores on our skin in a way, like mouths, if you need to remember this fact, for example. And not only are these chemicals, therefore, not merely being applied on top of our skin, so many of them are going into our skin and into our body, right? Now, in fact, this is an important point too, they're not just going into our bodies, they are designed, these chemicals, many of them toxic, and we'll get deeper into that, are designed to penetrate deep and fast. That's the whole point of a whole class of these chemicals that we're putting on our skin. Now, with that in mind, I'll go back to this idea that typical cosmetics are the worst offenders for toxins. And here's one very key reason that I would love people to remember on why. Foods that we put into our mouths, they have various filters. They have an advantage if they're containing toxins and stuff because they go through various filters in the body before they are ultimately sent out through your bloodstream and into your organs and so on and so forth. The main filter most people know is the liver, for example. And its job, it might be overtaxed these days, but its job is to filter out some of the impurities, the things are not good for our bodies. Ari, when you're talking about things you're applying to your skin getting sucked in, they don't have that kind of filtering really going on. There's very little, if any. So when it penetrates, and again, keep in mind, most of these chemicals are, their particles are small enough to penetrate. In fact, they are designed to penetrate, so they go straight into the bloodstream and are sent off throughout all the corners of the body, right? With that in mind, it's really kind of a double whammy on you. So now we're getting into, hey, maybe this is why I have these, so-called mystery symptoms. A big one being fatigue, for sure, fatigue, but so many others that people wonder what's going on. Sinuses are very, can be very associated with these chemicals. At the end of the day, it's a big, I'd like to call it a double whammy on the immune system. It's forces the immune system, including inside your body, does not, all of these different cells involved in our immune system, they don't like foreign objects. Their job is to try to detect. And now they're on overload. They're overworked because literally these products are designed all day long to sit there on your skin. Some of them, many of them, deodorants, again, certain anti-aging products, for example. And so the immune system's constantly like, okay, this thing's foreign, whatever's coming in, and it's fighting and it's fighting. So that's half the whammy. The other half of the whammy is that therefore it's weakened and it can't as effectively fight other pathogens that it's meant to be fighting. So we are really overloading, our bodies, our immune systems with all of this. Mm-hmm. Prompts the question, and I think it's a good question, and I do understand why people go for these products. I mean, the promise is there and all that good stuff. But I do compare, and by the way, versus if you're going to buy really, really good, products, and we'll talk briefly about that a little bit later, it will typically cost more. So I understand, people are on budgets. They want something versus nothing because they don't want to, smell bad, right? If we're talking deodorant, or they don't want to, they don't want the wrinkles or what have you. So they're prompted to buy something. I do liken it, though, to where we were in our mentality, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago with food, where a lot of the knowledge about food and the problems with pesticides and herbicides and all that was much newer, and there was a big resistance still out there, or oh, come on, that's not a big deal, amongst many people. And there wasn't this awareness in terms of, the processed food being as bad as we know it is, and all those sorts of things. There was an idea, and of course, in certain pockets, there was much more advanced thinking, but, on a general level. So I kind of liken these products to fast food. They really are the equivalent of fast food. So many of these typical products, I'll call them, that you'll find on any old, grocery store shelf or big box retailer shelf. And these chemicals are added. Like I said, well, certainly one class is a penetrator to drive the other ingredients deeper, but these are added for different reasons, because it makes them cheaper. They're synthetic. It's easier and cheaper to make. So it's going to drive the cost down, so the end consumer pays less. Understand. Longer shelf life, these pretty smells. In this Western world, we have gotten so trained, and that's the big we, not necessarily you and me, but the big we has gotten so trained to equate nice smelling stuff with effectiveness, even though what you're really smelling almost all of the time with these products is a synthetic, cocktail basically of stuff. I'll also get a bit more on fragrance in a moment, but all of these chemicals have a reason. Most of them are not really about you, in terms of helping you long-term look your best, long-term feel your best, long-term live longer, long-term feel better. That's not what they're about. Yeah. So it's much like fast food. There can be immediate gratification. I'll use anti-aging products, for example. Sure, some of these products, you apply them, they may, over a very short period of time, show some effect in terms of reducing the look of wrinkles. And you may think, wow, that's awesome, but you're paying a much longer term price in terms of your health, and ironically, even in terms of early aging with these products. Yeah. So it's just like fast food. It feels good to eat it for many people right away, but there's long-term consequences to that. Yeah. Now,
if I could interject one thing, I think this is a great frame around it. I think it's also a little bit more insidious, in the sense that if we eat fast food or real food, we know what we're eating, right? We know if we're eating Twinkies or broccoli. We can see it very clearly.
Yep.
But there's elements of greater subtlety, like if you're just presented with two broccoli heads, one's conventionally farmed, one's organic, you're just looking at the broccoli, there's no labels on it, you don't know which is which. And so a lot of people are looking at labels in the store. They're just looking at how pretty the labels are and the design on the labels to sort of gauge whether something is good or not good. Same thing with, grass-fed meat versus factory farm meat. If you don't have the knowledge of why it is a better choice to get the grass-fed, why that's going to be healthier for you and your kids, then you just look at the meat. They look the same, except one's $3 a pound, one's $10 a pound. It's like, of course, I'm going to go with the one that's $3 a pound. They're the same thing. But, there's one more example that I want to give, which is allulose, which is a type of sugar that I was talking about the other day. I made a little video on how to make elderberry jam. And I used allulose as the sweetener. And allulose is really interesting because it looks just like table sugar, and it's like 70% is sweet. So you just use like 1.3 times as much, and then it delivers the same sweetness. There's two key differences between it and regular sugar. One is it's way more expensive. It's like 5 times more expensive. Okay. So if you just look at that and you say, why would I use the same thing? It's like a sugar. Why would I use one that's 5 times more expensive? That doesn't make any sense. Well, here's why. The knowledge that ingredient, instead of being harmful to your health, believe it or not, it's a type of sugar that is actually associated with anti-aging, improved metabolic health, and longevity. And so it's that's what you're paying for, is you're paying a premium to get the difference between something that is unhealthy versus something that's healthy. And I think if you don't mind me interjecting, I think it's the same principle here with skincare as what you're talking about.
Well, that's a super valuable observation. And I will say, I mean, you it's listening to events like this that you're hosting, where you learn to read, so to speak, and become more, increasingly more aware of this. The last thing I ever want anyone feeling is like tense or scared or anything of that nature about any of this stuff, because I think it's a great thing when people keep taking steps forward. And interestingly, you make a few small changes, they can make monumental differences. And in terms of what you're saying, I will, if you don't mind, I'll dive a bit more into, kind of an overreaching way of being able to understand if the product, the best way, let me put it that way, of understanding if a personal care product or cosmetic, is going to be on the better side or much better versus worse. Because you're right. It can be very deceiving and it is a little more sinister because it really comes down to that company's ability to market, frankly, and to make it seem like it's going to solve all these problems and your life's going to change, or at least you're going to, smell amazing all day long because you're wearing the right deodorant, whatever, that cosmetic may be, or your hair is going to be voluminous and shiny. I mean, I think increasingly, especially the folks listening to something like this are aware, hey, wait a minute, I'm not going to believe all that stuff. I'm going to go a little deeper. I'm going to learn to read labels. I'm going to, continue to experience great programs like this one right now. And also let me caveat by saying, in cosmetics, especially if you're talking anti-aging and that sort of cosmetic, expensive always doesn't mean better either. In fact, it's interesting, and I could really go off on a tangent, but I will try to prevent myself from doing that too much, Ari. But I've seen two products that have almost identical, and by the way, heavy-duty synthetic ingredients. One is positioned as this budget item, and the same one, because they have French lettering on them, for example, and position them really high end, but they're still both garbage, frankly, in terms of toxins. So it's really indeed learning what to look for and understanding, which is precisely why folks are watching something like this. So on that note, let me point out just briefly some education on this front. I mean, there are all different kinds of chemicals. You are talking thousands of chemicals that here in the United States and unfortunately, in other places as well. Like I said, the European Union is considerably ahead in this regard, but there are thousands of chemicals allowed. But you can kind of, in terms of their toxicity, you can sum them up in 5 categories, which are direct carcinogens. And these, as the name implies, are potential or flat out known cancer-causing agents. I'll jump back to, hidden carcinogens. I'll just state it. That's a trickier category because that's the merging of 2 or more different chemicals in a product. And in and of themselves, those 2 chemicals might not be carcinogenic, but when they come together, they produce results and ingredients, frankly, that are carcinogenic. That's real tricky because they don't have to even list that on the label because they're just required for most ingredients, to list the ingredient itself, not what happens when they merge together. The other side of the equation is they don't even know what happens in so many cases when they put these different synthetics together. Another is of importance here for sure is endocrine disruptors. And there's well over 200 of these that have been identified that are allowed in cosmetics, multiple of them quite common in cosmetics. And I'll give a few examples later. But endocrine disruptors are basically, they wreak havoc on your hormones in some way or another. Allergens, an obvious one. And then penetrators, I already discussed these sinister little chemicals that are designed to drive all these others deep and fast into your body. So, that's just the 5 categories. Now, I think I will only go briefly through this, but I think a logical question that people might ask is why? Wait a minute, can't we trust the products on the shelf at least to some extent? And especially when it comes to cosmetics, personal care products, the answer, I'll just say it, is no. No, 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 please don't. It's the most unregulated industry in the United States. And I'm not calling for regulation or against regulation. At the end of the day, even in regulated industries, a lot of people realize they still have to be their own, best coach and leader. But I'm just pointing out a fact here that this is the most unregulated industry that there is. Mm-hmm. In what was it, 1930s, in 1938, the FDA passed a law, which is really the last law that still stands, Ari, relating to cosmetics and personal care products. And basically the law said, hey, companies that make these products, you're going to self-regulate. Can you handle that? Just be honest with us about what you're putting in there and you're on your own. Cool, cool. Off they go. And that was, there's been attempts, but there's been no substantial change since 1938 to that.
I remember being a kid and looking at ingredient lists on some of these products. And, you see all these weird chemical names. There's 20 different chemical names on a skin moisturizer.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, wow, that's amazing. All this technology. And I'm sure that all of these things have been put to the test in extensive, multi-year long safety studies in humans to determine that they're safe for use on our skin. And I distinctly remember thinking that they must have done, dozens of studies, safety studies on all of these hundreds of different chemicals. And that's the only way they could allow them to be in these products. And as I got older and looked into it, I'm like, oh, they haven't done really any safety testing or like, let's just put it this way, they've done maybe 1% of the amount of safety testing that they should have done.
Yeah, wow. Fantastic point. The fact of the matter is that companies can, and they certainly do, create a product and it goes straight on the shelf. There's no testing literally required. Now, there's some ingredients, grass generally recognized as safe, but they don't even have to worry about that. As long as these are not banned chemicals, they could go into their product. Now, these companies also, they're not stupid, obviously. In fact, they're far from it. They're multi-billion-dollar companies. The beauty care industry alone is $532 billion. There's and that's just what's categorized under the beauty care industry. We're not talking about the chemical companies, which are clearly part of that industry as well as other industries and certainly benefit from it, but that doesn't include how much they make. So they're mighty powerful and they're also mighty not stupid. Their argument, in general, I'll really narrow this down for people, when they have been challenged in the past, hey, you know, ingredient X is a known carcinogen. Their response is going to be, yeah, but it's in such a minute amount in this product that, you know, even if they had tested that minute amount, it doesn't really have much effect. What they are not saying, of course, but what people need to know is, sure, if one day in your whole life you used deodorant and that was it, they have a point. They have a point.
Mm-hmm.
But guess what? We use deodorant day after day after day. We put these products, like I said, on our skin, directly feeding our skin, these day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year. Not just one, but an average in the case of women of 12 a day, right? It's really what I call death by 1,000 cuts.
Well, that's 12 products, which may contain a total of maybe hundreds of different.
168 on average, like I said, 168 different chemicals. So you're doing this day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year. So all those little minute amounts that they might have tested one time, they're not talking about the impact of, you know, nor are they talking about the impact of all of them combined.
Yes, I was just going to say that's a critical point, because there's some research suggesting at least some compounds have the potential to synergize and create enhanced toxicity than they do alone.
Absolutely. Like I said, I mean, there's hidden carcinogens, for example. And that's only one class of potential, but it's a nasty class, you know, when two or more chemicals come together. You know, the EWG has investigated this. Others have investigated, and they know these chemicals are an outcome of these products. It really is mind-blowing to me. You know, this to me is kind of like, maybe, I don't know if we can call it the last frontier, but it's, you know, it's something that people have an idea about, you know, especially probably folks listening here have heard this in general before, but the depth of this and how far this goes and how much this really impacts people's health and well-being is astonishing to me. And I could, you know, people always ask when I talk about this, hey, you know, what are the worst? You know, what are the bad ones? And I'm like, well, you're talking thousands of chemicals that can be used. You're talking thousands that are used, and many of them are the worst. But, you know, people do love, you know, when you put things in boxes and categorize or you know, rank things or what have you. So, you know, I think a lot of people have heard of parabens. And there's certain types of parabens that have been found particularly harmful. Methylparaben, watch out for that one. Associated with, you know, linked to breast cancer, other cancers. Polyethylene glycol, or PEGs. These are also linked to cancer, thyroid issues, and other things like that. I mean, I can go on and on with this, but I want to point out one to watch for. And the reason I want to talk about that one is because, unlike these other chemicals that are required at least to be listed on the label, and those are a lot of those long words you were talking about that you looked at when you were young. And again, keep in mind that even if you are listing them on the label, these other ones, as we just pointed out, they can mix together and create all sorts of, you know, other chemicals that they don't need to list, and they probably are not even half aware of, for that matter. But at least they're required to list the other main ingredients, so to speak. But watch out for fragrance. Watch out for the ingredient that you will see on so many products, unfortunately sometimes on products calling themselves organic, even products calling themselves natural or what have you. And it also goes by, you know, scent is just another synonym for it. So if you look on a label and it says fragrance or scent, or on some of the, like the ones I was talking about earlier where they, you know, parfum, trying to sound French, right? Parfum, it all means the same thing. And what that means is that could be any of 4,000 different chemicals inside of that, including and different organizations, EWG and others, have tried to break some down, and they have found all the carcinogenics in there, and they found the endocrine disruptors and other nasty little things. But again, they, being the companies that make these, don't have to divulge anything more than calling it fragrance, because it's basically trade secret. You know, it's a it would harm their business if they revealed the magic potion, the magic synthetic, oftentimes potion behind this. So all they got to do is put fragrance there, and it could mean anything. When you see that, man, run the other way, because 9 times out of 10, you're going to want to run the other way in that case with that. Another interesting one is triclosan. I'm sure you've heard of that. And I think a lot of people will remember triclosan from 2016 when it was the United States did ban it, but only Ari from the hand soaps, the antibacterial hand soaps.
Yeah, that's interesting. I had a recollection that it was banned, but I didn't realize it was only banned from certain products, but not others.
Isn't that bizarre? I mean, and it's
harmful, but only sometimes.
Yeah, so if you're washing your hands with it, but it's in a wide range of other personal care products, and it's perfectly allowed in there, and you will see them. And it's got endocrine disruption aspects to it. It's it's part and parcel to the whole thing with the use of antibiotics in general. So it creates super bacteria, as they call them. I can go on and on about a lot of this stuff. Yeah, those are a couple to watch for.
It's interesting that it's banned in soaps and hand soaps, but still allowed in personal cosmetics. And on the one hand, this makes sense, logical sense, if the goal is maybe to decrease, as you said, the antibiotic-resistant bacteria in sort of the broader population. On the other hand, if you're looking at the harmful effects of triclosan on our individual physiology, in one case, you're like putting it on for a few seconds, washing it off. In the other case, you're like applying it and leaving it there, which I mean, is almost certainly going to result in much higher levels that are absorbed into your body. Yet they're saying that's the one that's okay, that's still allowed.
It was because of the outcry, it really caught on, which, there's a good aspect to that, I guess, in that little brief moment in 2016 that it was such outcry about it. But you bring up a good point. And also the fact that it's sitting on your skin. Again, you do have a microbiome, and it's all over your body. And so if triclosan's in the deodorants, or if it's anywhere else and it's sitting there all day long, it's harming the good bacteria on your skin too. It's just like any antibiotic. It's kind of, most people think of antibiotics of what they, the pills they put in their mouth from their doc. And I think most people know by now, that's not like a highly targeted, type of medication that only goes after one bad guy. It's just basically, if there's a bunch of bacteria in the room and a lot of them are really good guys, the antibiotic just shoots them all. They're all goodbye, everybody. It flattens everything around. Same thing for the, on your skin. So yeah, but again, it's mind boggling, how out of control, I guess I'll say, that the industry has got with all of this. I laugh, but it's really sad. I mean, formaldehyde, watch for this ingredient. It's in so many products. And I think people get a creepy sense just hearing that word, because it's what's used in embalming. It's used, people might remember it from, high school biology. It's what the, poor frogs that, we're sitting in preserved forever. And you're applying this stuff to your body, and therefore it's going inside your body. You can imagine, it's neurotoxic. It's heavily associated with asthma and other things. So there's so many ingredients. And again, if I had about 5 hours, maybe I'd sit here and tick them all off for you, Ari, and I still wouldn't, remember all of them. Some of them long names I can't even remember, to be honest.
There's studies in new babies where they look at umbilical cord blood. Have you seen this?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they're taking samples of umbilical cord blood, and they found, I think there's 2 studies. One found about 300, one found about 400 different man-made chemicals already in the bloodstream that baby is exposed to before they're even born.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it is, when people understand that the scale at which they're being exposed to these things, it's just incredible.
Yeah. I mean, and you remind me of an important point on this too, is that, what you just said alone speaks volumes. And I think when people back off, from, we've been mesmerized by these products, over years and years and years of marketing and belief about these things. And, so we associate, certain brand names, for example, with benefits that, because we're applying this, or, or certain good smells, even if they're synthetic with, this, like I said, works good. When you back off and you just hear what you just said alone, and then you just think, wait a minute, my body is a natural thing. And these chemicals can't possibly be good. They just can't be. I mean, it makes total sense. It's pure, common sense, but we just don't think that way about feeding our skin as we do with, our mouths. Or let me put this another way. If I handed you what, a small teaspoonful of any of the chemicals I just mentioned, or even a minute amount of some of these, and I said, consume it, eat it. Most people say, are you insane? No, I'm not going to do that. I mean, I know that, what is that? No, I'm going to eat formaldehyde, get out of here. And yet they have no problem putting it on their skin, but they do have a problem if they understand this. It's just
right.
Awareness.
Yeah, give it to me in a pretty bottle. I'll slather it all over my skin. But if you try to feed it to me in a spoon, I'll say you're crazy and refuse to do it. Yeah, it's absolutely true.
Yeah. In fact, and I've often said this too, I mean, in some cases, like I said, at least if you put it in your mouth and swallow this stuff, you have a fighting chance that some of these, your liver, for example, poor liver, they're going to go through a fight, but it's going to try to get some of that out. But when you put it on your skin, it's just right in, sure, slowly, but it's surely, like we said, because it's over and over every single day. So let me switch gears. So I think we've got, quite a bit of awareness here about it. From another perspective, to me, even though this may be one of the least known and most causative of various symptoms, including in my experience from what I've seen from studies and research, fatigue, and as well as a lot of the other symptoms that I mentioned and didn't mention. But if you got these mystery symptoms, it's something truly to think about. But on the one hand, it might be little known areas, what I'm saying. But on the other hand, it's also, in my estimation, for what I've seen, the good news is it's easy to change versus so many other areas of our health and well-being. Take diet, for example. Now, I think many people here could probably do a pretty good job of ticking off the right things to do, when it comes to eating, especially the big right ones. But it's much harder for people to do it and stick to it, right? It just is. I mean, because there's temptations and all sorts of things in our way and habits, and that's a powerful thing, eating and taste and habit. Another one is exercise. Everybody knows it's important. Fitness is important, but it's a lot harder to do. In this case, compared or relative to those types of things, the shift to better choices here is easy, because literally it's just understanding, what the better choices are, and what I call going through, kind of a clean sweep, and I'll get to that in a moment here, of what you're currently using, just making an assessment of it. Let me dive into that in a moment. But the other beauty of this is that even when you start with some changes, many people are so surprised that it does lead to a pretty fast improvement in how they feel when they've identified, holy cow, it is my deodorant. It is the, anti-aging cream that I've been using, did contribute. In this case, it literally, feeling it doesn't necessarily, or not feeling something doesn't necessarily mean it's not working, right? But in this case, so often I've seen that when people do make the shift, they can feel it, especially in terms of energy. It just improves when they get rid of the junk that they've been using a long time. And again, nobody should feel bad because maybe you just didn't know all this or know the depth of this. So
what's the solution? Should everybody just be like me and only use soap and toothpaste?
There are certain, I'll call them advanced dermatologists out there, and I would tend to agree that what you're doing is certainly far healthier, including for your skin and how you look, than putting a lot of this garbage that people put on their skin, including the ones designed or that proclaim to be anti-aging.
I'm glad to hear that my laziness is helpful.
Yeah, you're doing a good job by being lazy. And there is an argument to be made that, people are over showering. There's an argument to be made that, of course, they're, slathering on too much stuff all over the place. Some can be beneficial. Too much, as we've clearly discussed here, especially if it's, these artificial toxins, is not good for you. over showering. I think people have heard this, before, but you really don't want to take showers every single day, because you have your body has done a good job for a really long time, long before all of this of taking care of you and producing its natural oils and all that. So actually, I'd say, your beauty routine is working, and it's not a bad one.
Thank you. I'm going to play this recording for my wife.
Yeah. So, but what, again, I think people, when I make a big recommendation, is just to take inventory. To take inventory of what you're doing. Same as when you did it with what you're eating, same as you did it in other aspects of your life. Really, maybe even sit there with a notepad, or at least put them all out on the bathroom counter and look at what you are actually using every single day. First of all, it's surprising, because we might locate these things in different places, but when you put every single cosmetic and personal care product you use all together in the sink or a big bucket, or you write them all down, you're like, holy cow. First of all, you will be surprised. It's maybe 12, maybe considerably more for some people than 12. Second, turn them around. Just check out the labels on these things. However, this is where I will say it is a monumentally difficult task to try to assess every single one of these ingredients, because like you said, and I think most people realize this already, sometimes these ingredients, can go on, and they're these difficult words. Now, you could hypothetically check each and every one of them and probably find, like I've done, quite a bit of research, at least on some of them, that suggests how high on the toxicity scale it might be, and are they carcinogens and stuff. But who's going to do that? So for me, there's no perfect way, but there is a good way. In the United States, I try to choose USDA certified organic products. Now, why? There's no perfection, but that is an independent process of any company and its manufacturer. And that process, they have to show and demonstrate, and at least so far, to what I know, Ari, at this time in history, still, it's legit, and they have to prove that the ingredients, both within that product and from where they sourced from, if they're natural, are truly toxin-free. 95% of them have to be truly organic. What about the other 5%? The other 5%, there's a very short list of products that are truly, widely considered safe that may be included. So, but there's nothing that's, known or even a suggested or kind of strong known toxin. And also, the natural ingredients, furthermore, have to show that they came from organic farms or processes. And in other words, let's just, I don't know, I'm throwing anything out of banana. And by the way, there's so many fruits and stuff that are used out there. It had to be organically raised, so there's no pesticides and herbicides. So I say, listen, you want an easier route? Yeah, you're going to pay a few bucks more, but look in the United States for USDA certified organic, or certain states have some equivalents, or other countries, if you're from somewhere else in the world, not all, but other countries have some equivalents. In France, it's EcoCert, I think. And it at least is far more of a trusted guiding post than any other out there. And then you want to look for things, by the way, it also means non-GMO when you see that. But you can also look on the label for other certifications as well. Do your homework, in other words, on these certifications. And I'm just saying, the one I most trust in the United States is USDA certified organic, and there are others worth trusting, versus trying to dig in deep on every single ingredient, because you're going to be sitting there on your computer all day and night for weeks. If you have 12, products you use routinely and all these different ingredients in them. So that's there's no perfect way, but for me, that's kind of been the most effective.
Beautiful. This is an amazing guide to choosing healthy personal care products. Brian, thank you so much. I want to ask you if there's anything else you want to say to wrap up, but I also want to say something. You're very humble in not including a pitch here for your own product line, but you were nice enough several months ago to send me and my wife a little goodie pack of some of your products. And I'm not just saying this, and I would not say it if I didn't mean it. The products are phenomenal. They really are. The ingredients are phenomenal. And there's been a couple times where we have sick kids and we've used the little the breathe balm that you have, and they work, and they're just. I look at the ingredients, and I am a stickler for this stuff, as you are, and so is my wife, and I have zero objections to any of your products that I've seen. So well done on making like truly excellent products. If you want to let people know where they can get those, feel free to do that. I have no opposition to you letting people know, giving a little pitch for your products. I don't make any money off of it. Happy to promote it though, because you're doing good work.
Well, it's very kind of you. Yeah. So they can go to puritywoods.com, for example. I talked, okay, so you open that door, and I will conclude with this. One of the products is an anti-aging product. And the reason that I launched that whole organization is because I did my homework and I wanted a good product for that. I mean, I'll take off my glasses and I'll try to get real close. Maybe people can see a little bit of, the crow's feet. I'm 50, and my wife is a cosmetologist by training, who's very much into the, natural aspect of things now. And we hunted and we found some pretty good products, Ari. But they were pretty good in the sense of, USDA or certified organic, maybe, but then they really didn't work. And I had done, oh my God, for so many years, research on ingredients. I'm an ingredient, freak, including all the good stuff out there. And I love studying that stuff and understanding it deeply. And I'm like, I have a pretty strong understanding of the right, mix of the best. I'm not going to say I'm a formulator. I work with some of the best in Canada, on this thing. But by and large, the reason that I started that whole company was because we wanted this for ourselves first and foremost. So we were our own, first customers, basically. And I'm like, holy cow, this stuff really is rocking. It works, and it's done really well since that. So thank you for pointing that out. And I will only offer, by the way, things that are USDA certified. Organic. I mean, truly pure. And what that means, I'll tell you, in the case of our company, we don't get to call it that. We have to go through this process where we're sweating bullets to make sure, that it's determined as such from this quite strict independent process of us. So whether it's my organization or any organization, Ari, I would really recommend for people to go seek out those and patronize those companies that go through that, because people don't know that takes a lot. And honestly, I'll be the first to say, I mean, I don't offer a deodorant, but to me, that I did keep bringing that one up too, because that's sitting in one of the most sensitive places on your body all day, every single day. And I'm not just talking about the aluminum. So for me, that would be the very first product I'd say to people to go change and go find a USDA certified organic. Try different ones until you find one that works, because that's really close to the breasts for women. That's really close to the heart and stuff like that. And again, these chemicals are going straight in, and then work your way down. Last thing I'll say on that note, is guidance again. That recommendation I just made stands for how the order to do this in. If you're wearing it constantly, if you're feeding it to your skin all day, every single day, to me, that would be the most important ones to start with. Don't panic. Just work your way through these things. Whereas something like that you occasionally apply to your hair, or shaving cream even, that might be second or third on the list, because it's a periodic use. So I would just walk calmly through those and make changes. Any changes you make on this front, again, I'll conclude by saying are going to be helpful, and you may very well likely even feel the difference.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. I think this knowledge is super important. Brian, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with my audience. I really appreciate it. It's been great to have you on and connect with you. One more time, your website, I think, is puritywoods.com. Is that correct?
Purity, yeah, purity. Okay. Completely clean woods, because they're a nice place to be. puritywoods.com.
Nice. Thank you so much, my friend. Great to connect with you, and look forward to our next chat.
Thanks, you too.
Hey there, this is Ari again. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, if you found it valuable, please share it with your friends, share it with your family, help me get the word out there. Also, if you're on YouTube, make sure to hit the subscribe button and hit that little
bell to get notifications every time we release a new video or new episode of the podcast. And if you're listening to this, make sure to subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or on your favorite podcast app. Thanks so much for supporting my work at the Energy Blueprint. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I will see you in the next